Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Gifford, the superintendent of the Dartmouth Public Schools, and I'm very happy to welcome you today to our question and answer session. We have our central office staff here to answer some of the questions, many questions that we've received. So I'll just ask them to wave as I introduce our Chief Technology Officer, Jonathan Galashaw.
Hi, everyone.
Our Pupil Support Service Administrator, Ms. Townsend, Ms. Beth Townsend. Our Assistant Pupil Support Service Administrator, Lori Jodwin. Our Assistant Superintendent, Michelle Roy. Our other Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Facilities, Mr. Kiley. And our Director for Teaching and Learning, Tracy Oliveira. So today we just want to provide you with some answers to the many questions we received. We are not going to go through them all one by one, because we had so many questions, and obviously some of them were duplicates and very theme related. So we'll be asking each person in their area of expertise to provide some information on those sections. I first wanted to let the community know that we understand that this has been a very difficult and trying time. This is a pandemic, and we acknowledge your worry and concern. You are giving us your most precious asset, your children. And we recognize that, and we have done our darndest over the last few months to provide you with the best service we can. There are many complexities to a school district, and it seems like I always hear about a tissue box syndrome. You pull one issue out and the next one pops up. So I just wanted to let you know that we do recognize how difficult this is, and that not every decision will please everyone, but we continue to try to do the best we can to service all of our students. So to start off, I know that most of you know that we had to come up with 3 plans, and I'll just talk about 2 very briefly. We had a remote plan that we've developed, and that is to provide students with services remotely. Our second plan is a hybrid plan, which, as you probably know, we had to break our school population into 2 cohorts. That is so we can have enough space in the buildings, abide by all of the guidelines, which I know you've been hearing about, maintain 6-foot distances, mask wearing, cleaning our buildings, etc. While we made the decision to go remote to begin with, we looked at many factors, including our building capacity, our staffing issues, how we were getting our buildings ready as far as the cleaning, cleaning out of the classrooms, etc. And also, I just want you to know that while the governor came out with a metric, that was after the day after we made our decision. With that said, any future decisions, and I will talk about the plan to move to hybrid in a second, any future decisions, we will continue to consider all of those metrics, and no decision will be made without at least a 2-week trend looking at the virus and the metrics and what's happening in our community. We're in great contact with our local director of public health, who will assist us in making those decisions, as well as our staffing concerns, as well as what's happening in our buildings themselves. And the community will always be kept up to date on those decisions. Right now, and I'm just going to give a quick overview. We did present this at school committee the other night, and it will be posted, if it's not already, on our website. The transition into hybrid right now, which the school committee approved, is starting on October 1. And as I said, we have 2 cohorts of students split. We've split the district in half. Those cohorts were established with transportation in mind and building capacity and special situations where we had to maintain specific ratios for our special education students in our classrooms. So actually, I'm going to back up a minute, because I'm going to say about the initial starting of the season. So our teachers are coming in on August 31st, and they will have 10 days of professional development, and where they will learn about our health and safety protocols, work together collaboratively to prepare for the students' arrival remotely on September 15th. I say remotely, that is for all students except for our pre-K students whose IEPs mandate that they be enrolled in our integrated pre-K program, as well as our special education programs, PATHS, PALS, and PASS, our specific programs. And if you need more information on that, you can please contact your building principal. So on September 15th, our students will arrive remotely. Obviously, you are going to receive information from your buildings prior to that day. We're asking that teachers will reach out to folks during their 10 days of professional development so that your child will be all set to go. Beginning on October 1 is the day we begin to transition into our hybrid model. That day, we will bring in October 1 and 2, our pre-K through 2 students and our grade 6. Moving on to October 13th through 16th will be our grade 3 through 5 and our grade 7. And then finally, by the week of October 19th through the 23rd, all of our students will be entering into our school system in a hybrid model. And again, that is our plan. Anything can change depending on what's happening with the virus and other issues. So with that said, I know we have tons of questions, so I just want to give that brief overview, but get started on some of the specific areas that you asked about. And I think it's probably important that you hear about how we prepared our buildings and the kind of cleaning we have in place, et cetera. So I'm going to ask Mr. Kiley, who's been working very hard with our custodial and maintenance department to get ready for the school year. Mr. Kiley?
Thank you, Dr. Gifford. So it's been a lengthy process to get ready. We've been utilizing various Department of Education guidance throughout over the summer to shape what we do and how we do it in the buildings. We began this back in March by cleaning and disinfecting buildings in the hopes that we would return to school in the spring. And obviously that did not occur. But since then, we've been preparing for our hopes that we'll have students back in buildings soon. So in doing so, Dr. Gifford mentioned some of the things that are very important that we needed to address, such as physical distancing in the classrooms, looking at the feasibility of how many students we could place in each classroom and still maintain proper physical distancing. The guidelines has sort of evolved a little bit and are a little bit I don't know, unclear, I guess, in that they talked about aim for 6 feet of physical distancing, but 3 feet was could be appropriate. We've made every effort to use 6 feet as our standard in all of our classrooms. So that severely limits the capacity in each and every classroom. So we've figured out that, approximately we can fit about 12 to 13 students in most of our classrooms, although they do vary in size. So we've been setting up those classrooms accordingly. We have developed traffic patterns throughout the buildings so that we can ensure that students can maintain that 6-foot distance when they're not in the classroom. So we have, in cases where folks may be closer in office spaces, added plexiglass shields throughout buildings. We've added hand sanitizer stations throughout the buildings in all the classrooms and in other areas, high traffic areas, so that people can practice good hand hygiene. And we have purchased signage. We have also purchased a great deal of PPE, personal protective equipment, for staff and students in order for them to be safe when they do return to the buildings. So we've also prepared to clean and disinfect the buildings as we move forward. So to do that, we've purchased EPA list N SARS-CoV-2 approved disinfectants, which kill COVID-19. We have purchased equipment to spray classrooms. We have a focus on high touch areas through the day. So we've shifted custodial staff hours during the day shift in order to be able to touch clean more high touch areas during the day, such as doorknobs, stair rails, bottle filling stations, bathroom fixtures during the day, and then sanitize classrooms at night. We, in terms of our heating and ventilating systems, we have adjusted those so that they will run, their hours of operation will be longer, promoting more fresh air exchange. We've cleaned those. We have new filters in those. And we are also committed to installing filters more often than we would otherwise to ensure cleanliness in those units. We, consistent with the Department of Education guidance, have committed and made sure that the windows in classrooms are operational so that we can open windows and promote additional ventilation. So that's been a project for preparation for this summer as well. So those are some of the things that we've done to prepare for a return of staff and kids.
Thanks, Mr. Kiley.
You're welcome.
I also know, obviously, that we've had a lot of questions about what we're doing. We mentioned our virtual platform very often and what we were trying to do to provide students with an opportunity to engage in education if parents decide that they do not want their child to return to the school for medical or other reasons. So we have chosen something for the middle and high school, and obviously the elementary is a different situation. So I'm going to ask Mr. Galashaw to discuss the middle and high school platform now.
Thank you, Dr. Gifford. Just to give you an idea of where this has come from, the state realized the need for an online program for those that might not return back to their districts. So they, in early summer, they went to work with looking at various products and going out to bid for those products and coming up with two options. They have two companies for two options. One option is a curriculum, online curriculum that can be taught by our own teachers or the own teachers within a school district. And they picked two companies for that. One of those companies was Edgenuity, who we've worked before with credit recovery at the high school and we're familiar with. The second option, which we'll talk about later, was where you would send your child out to be instructed by a teacher from another place, Massachusetts certified teacher from another place. We'll talk about that next with Mrs. Oliveira. But the Edgenuity platform that has been used at the high school and now be used high school and middle school is an online platform that has a full curriculum and courses and electives that a student can enroll in and be self-paced through this program. Our teachers will oversee that process, checking in with the student and receiving those grades at the end to put back into the system, our Aspen system. They've used that for credit recovery in the past successfully. So those parents and families who opted to do that remote learning will be the schools will be in contact with them to discuss that platform and the process of enrolling in that system to do the online course. We can provide the computer, the Chromebook, for them to do their work, as we do for all the students at the high school and middle school. And the Chrome issue is something we'll talk about in a second about the middle school as it expands. So to talk more about the elementary level and how that option came to pass and how we went in that direction, Mrs. Oliveira was going to address that because it dealing mostly with its most important piece, both high school and middle school and elementary curriculum. Mrs. Oliveira?
Thank you, Mr. Galasha. So as we investigated our online platforms for our full remote learning for families that chose not to come back into the buildings, we uncovered that we couldn't really find the best match for Dartmouth Public Schools. We were really looking for a high quality teaching and learning instruction, and we, to be quite honest, could not find that. So what we've decided to do at Dartmouth Public Schools is kind of create our own virtual academy. So parents that have opted to do this will be getting an email sometime tonight to see if you are still interested in with all the details of what we're going. So we will be hiring 6 teachers kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, and fifth grade teacher that will be running our virtual platform. Myself will be overseeing the teachers, but they will be doing exactly what is done in our classrooms. So that way, when our kids come back and we're all joined back together, we have no gaps in knowledge. We've all been exposed to the same standards and with the same rigorous understandings that we all want. So parents that kind of chose that, they will be receiving that email. We'll be following the same scope and sequence. Parents are going to have to commit to staying there the entire year. At the other levels, we were looking at semesters, but because we're hiring teachers, we're looking at parents committing for the entire year. Instruction will be through Google Meet, and it'll be using, like I said, all of our DPS curriculum. We're not sure about inclusion of special areas in this platform. It will be dependent upon staffing. And we're really excited to get this up and going. We think it'll be the best match for our students.
And I imagine we've talked about the idea, once again, the middle school, high school is reaching out, the elementary will be reaching out by email. But if people still have questions, because now they think, I know we had a number of folks in the initial survey that were quite unsure, even in these questions, please reach out to Bush Street and we'll be able to answer those questions if you think you might still want to enroll your child in the virtual platform. So now, of course, we need to answer some of our questions for us from a special ed area. And I'd like for us to talk about some of those questions that came in about the logistical aspects for our special education folks. And although 504s is not a special ed initiative, we do, I know you two ladies address those issues as well. So I'm not sure if Ms. Townsend or Ms. Jodwin wants to start there.
Yeah, so I'll begin speaking a little bit about the logistical questions that are related to special education. So first and foremost, if a student is enrolled, as Dr. Gifford mentioned, in one of our specialized programs, so for us, that's PALS, PASS, and PATHS. Those are located, the elementary versions of those classrooms are all at the Quinn Elementary School. And then the middle school and the high school also have those classrooms. So if students are enrolled in one of those programs, they will start in person full days, 5 days per week, in accordance with the full school day that the building had in the past. And that will begin on September 15th. Students who are enrolled in preschool, where their IEP for special ed services requires that the student get the full preschool program, they will also begin on September 15th. They will also begin in person, but they will attend from 9 to 12, 3 hours each day of the 5 days. So there's a little bit of a difference there. So I know that's a question that came in quite a bit. So I wanted to clarify that. We did have questions about whether or not students would get their special ed services if parents elect to keep them remote, and the answer is yes. Students on IEPs whose are electing, whose parents have decided that they stay remote, will receive their IEP services remotely and through various service providers, again, based on what the individual plan dictates. They are absolutely able to get those services remotely. Students who are in the specialized programs who have IEPs that portions of their IEPs would be inclusion with general ed students. They will be able to join the general education peers for some inclusion minutes in some ways once the peers are in school for hybrid. So as the general ed peers are joining us throughout the month of October, we will certainly be looking for ways in which those students in specialized programs can have some of those inclusion minutes with their general ed peers. Also, there was questions related to the hybrid model of preschool. Once the hybrid model begins, we know that peer partners from the preschool program will be starting to phase in, just as the other students will phase in for hybrid. So at that point, the preschool special education students will have access for a full day of learning during the hybrid model. So just those are some of the logistical, most common questions.
We also got a lot of questions related to 504 plans. And as Dr. Gifford said, it is not a special education initiative, but we wanted to speak with that as well. 504 plans, are in effect, and they will be implemented in the fall. Continue to be implemented, but they will also be implemented in accordance with the safety requirements. So for example, if an accommodation is for close proximity to a teacher, then the student seat would be a seat that is 6 feet away from the teacher. And obviously, if a student is in a remote environment, some accommodations would not be in effect just because of the nature of the accommodation. Also for students with 504 plans that have allergy-related accommodations, the 504 team should collaborate to ensure that the classes with students who have allergies will remain an allergen-free environment, and that lunches in the classrooms adhere to allergy requirements as well.
Okay, I know we have a lot more questions on special ed, and we'll get back to that in a little bit. So I wanted to talk a little bit about structure of the day, the scheduling of students in the hybrid. What exactly does my remote child, what is my child doing in a remote setting? What is my child doing in a hybrid setting? What kind of lessons are they getting? What does the day look like? So once again, I'm going to turn it over to Director of Teaching and Learning, Ms. Oliveira, to talk about that.
Thank you again, Dr. Gifford. So we had a lot of questions that go with just that. What does the structure look like? And will my child be on a computer for 6 hours a day? So if we unpack this little by little, we first have the remote setting. All of our students, with the exception of what we've talked about in our special programs, will be starting remotely on September 15th. During that time, students will be receiving their education on a computer. But our goal is not to have a student on a computer looking at a screen like we're doing right now for 6 hours a day. The reason why the school system and the Department of Ed pushed back our start time of schools was so that teachers could prepare for the shift of instruction. So our 10 days of PD are going to be focused on how do we deliver our instruction in a remote fashion where it's still as rigorous as what we want it to be. So our teachers will be working on I'm going to give one elementary example. So we teach phonics. We do a lot of little cards and sounds and unpacking that sound. And what we're going to do instead of doing that is, one example is the teacher might just say, go around your house and find something that starts with M, and kids will come back and have those conversations with what has M, and then they will go off to do something else. So during the remote time, which is either 2 weeks for our younger kids up to about 4 weeks for our high school students, students will be receiving direct instruction and then time off the computer to do that work, to finish assignments, to work on projects, and then come back to the next class. So if you have a high school student, they will be following the schedule just like brick and mortar, where they'll have their first period class, the teacher will give some instruction, and then the student will go off to do some work. But the teacher will still be available on Zoom if the child should have any questions or need some work. The same thing will be at our middle school. And at our elementary school, teachers will give a lesson. We have a schedule, and I'm going to get back to the schedule at the elementary school in a little bit because we had a lot of questions about that. But they have a schedule, so there'll be an ELA time. And it's a 2-hour block when you look at it, and that's a long time. But the goal was, and what teachers are going to be structuring their lessons to be, is they will have a little bit of a reading lesson. They'll go into what their mini lesson is, what the goal of what they want the student to work on. The student will go off and do some reading. The teacher will then work with small groups, maybe a couple of kids, be available for questions for kids, and then bring everyone back and maybe say 25 minutes, I'm making that time up, but 25 minutes depending on the age level, and they will do a little share session. What did you read? Just like we do in a brick and mortar classroom. And then they'll do the same thing for writing. They'll give a little mini lesson, kids will go off and do their writing, and then come back for our share session. So that'll be the work that's done in the first 10 days of school, is kind of unpacking some of that work. And just if I can keep going, some of the work questions that we had was about the elementary schedule. So when we build a schedule, it's probably one of the like building a 3D jigsaw puzzle because we have a lot of moving parts. We have a lot of special areas, interventionists, children who receive special services, and we try to fit that all in. So we heard some of the talk about lunchtimes being off. We understand that. Part of it was just we gave snack time earlier for our little kids. We understand families will be having lunchtime at different times. We just asked maybe make a sandwich, put it on the counter, have kids come together for lunchtime. We get the socialization. We did try to go back. We revamped the schedules. We kind of had the schools look at them again to bring lunch times a little bit closer together. The other goal we were trying to get at was that as we start transitioning into hybrid, we need to keep the same schedule because we really didn't want our little learners to be going through all these different schedules. Just like at middle school and high school, they'll be keeping the same schedule. We kind of wanted that for our elementary students too. So we built a schedule that will work in remote and it'll also work in hybrid so that students still get all the special areas, they're interventionists. So we're tweaking that a little bit. We're going to put that back out. But I just wanted folks to understand the gravity of building that, of putting everything together and just trying to make it work for, 1,000 different students across the district. So hopefully that answers some questions.
And if I may transition from I'm sorry, Dr. Gifford, if I may, from Mrs. Oliveira, the delivery of that instruction is complemented with the software and the software management the teachers will be using in GoGuardian and other platforms like Google Classroom and Google Meet. So all of that amazing curriculum will be organized so that children can follow it through Google Classroom, through Meet when a conversation. Just to also talk to Mrs. Oliveira, we use the word Zoom a lot. It's become synonymous with, it's like a tissue or a magic marker. It's become because it's a great name. They got that name. We're trying to transition to Google Meet because it's fully integrated into Google Classroom and to GoGuardian and such. So sometimes we use that word Zoom. We'll still do Zooms like we're doing now because Zoom has a large capacity in the streaming that we're doing now. But in the instructional area, it's that Meet. They just didn't grab a good, clever name like Zoom. So it's one of the things I wanted to mention. But some of the tools they're using in GoGuardian Teacher, GoGuardian is the software that filters the content that your child is using on their Chromebook at home. It's a filter that follows them home. Usually we filter out inappropriate material here, but GoGuardian reaches out. But it also has a program called Teacher, which is a great way for a teacher to see the whole classroom and project their screen to the child. And also the video that they can start a video starting up automatically from their classroom. The teachers are going to love it. The middle school was using it last year, but all the schools are using it this year. And we're doing training on it in the upcoming weeks with the tech teachers and the teachers. I think they're going to find it a really cool management tool and a communication tool for the kids. So I just wanted to throw that in there. It's a complement to the curriculum that we do. It's just the vehicle. So I'll talk more about vehicles like Chromebooks because I know everyone is only tuned in to hear about when they're getting their Chromebook, and that's why I'm here. So when it's my time, Dr. Gifford, when it's my time.
I was just gonna continue. I forgot all about the hybrid schedule, which we had tons of questions about. Also, people were very confused, I guess, and we get that as to what does a child do when they're at home. So as we know, our hybrid schedule is an alternating day schedule. We have cohort A and cohort B. We have a color-coded school calendar that will be coming out soon to help parents with those days. But your student will be attending Monday, Wednesday, Friday of one week, Tuesday, Thursday of the next week. And that'll continue throughout our hybrid phase. When your child is in school, the teachers will be doing direct instruction, just like a regular class. Now, there'll only be half the amount of kids in that class. So our goal is we will be able to maybe get through a little bit of things quicker. We know not at the same pace, but a little bit of a adjusted pace. But our teachers during those 10 days will also be working on adjusting our curriculum so that when they're in person, they're teaching more direct teaching. When the students go home, they will be doing the reinforcement and the practice. When students are at home, they will not be on a computer meeting, Google Meet, with their classroom. They will be completing their work, their assignments, their reading, their writing, solving math problems, doing projects that their teachers sent them home with the day before. The reason we chose the alternating day was so that there could be a lot of contact with teachers. We wouldn't lose a kid for 5 days at home when they get stuck on a problem or anything. We're going to be coming right back and forth so that teachers can give feedback and send the kids back home to do work. That was just a lot of our questions was about what does that hybrid day look like? So I just wanted to reinforce that when we're on hybrid, kids will still be working on a computer through their Google Classroom because that's where all our assignments will be, but they won't be meeting or live face-to-face with their teachers because the teachers will be teaching the other half of the class. I think that will kind of clear up the schedule.
Since Dr. Gifford can't speak for some reason, technical difficulties, I'll jump in with communication. Oh, ironically, you're back. So, okay.
You can go for it right
Okay,
now.
communication. I just want to say that we're doing the best we can to maintain this, our website. There's a main website for the district and there's one for every school. We try to put as much information as we can up there. It's a wealth of knowledge. It's great to have a central point, a central repository for information. Explore the website. Always there's something on there to send to the webmaster if there's a suggestion I can't find. Boy, it's confusing. You make an attempt at trying to be in the mind of a resident or teacher, student or parent to find out how would you find something. So you try to keep it as simple as possible. We're trying to do that here, and we're trying to post things. I know the learning sites that Mrs. Oliveira has been putting up there, amazing information. One of the questions I received, and Dr. Gifford, I did man those questions. There were 208. I want you to know that. So our community is extremely active, and most of the questions were multi-level. So that's awesome. That shows care and involvement. One of the questions was, can you make videos about how you're coming back? I know the tech teachers and myself, we are going to create those videos and find some way to get them organized. So you can do a how-to. How do I get, there's on there now is how do I get access to my Aspen account? Or how do I log on to my Gmail and things like that. So we're trying to build those. We have programs that build production of, a quick video of how to, and your mouse follows the screen so you can follow along. You can pause if necessary. And we'll provide those links up here to all of the software that we have so the parents can understand what kind of software that's been extremely vetted through curriculum, through the instructional technology people, before being subscribed to by our district. We have really quality software like iExcel and Naviance for the kids in the high school. And we have a lot of those programs. So I just wanted to mention that. So communication. And as always, if there's something extremely urgent, we will contact you through our all call system. And for those viewers who don't know who's the voice it is for the all call, I'll give you a little preview here. This is a message from the Dartmouth Public Schools. So you needed to not see me to know if the voice was there. So I just wanted to say that's me. It's a guilty pleasure of being here in Dartmouth. But I just wanted to say that if there's something important, we will do the all call to you, the text, the app. But for most information, right here, the website. Sorry, Dr. Gifford, I get rambling. Too much coffee today.
No, thanks, Mr. Galashore. I know we're here to help each other remember all of these fine points from these questions. I do want to address one thing also. Some folks asked about how we're building relationships with our students, especially during the remote. So I just wanted to reiterate that during the 10 days that the teachers are here, and as Ms. Oliveira mentioned, involved in a lot of professional development, we've left a lot of time for them to reach out to our parents and via a virtual method to get to know them. I know I'm told, the elementary folks will be reaching out as well. We want to find out about our kids and just to start that relationship. So we're trying our best, as again, remote's a little bit difficult, but at least to start it then. And I also know that the schools are working on some kind of virtual tour or orientation. I know the middle school's been working. I just talked to Mr. Parati, who's wonderful and helping us out tonight behind the scenes, that the high school is doing a transition, 9th grade transition video. So there is more information coming from your schools that will help your student transition into what the expectations are. So now I kind of wanted to turn it over to Mr. Kiley again, because we have transportation to talk about. Some of the things you mentioned in the schools about some of the transitions we've made, but particularly like the isolation area and maybe how lunch is being facilitated, some of those logistical pieces for the day.
Thank you, Dr. Gifford. So, yeah, I think I'll start with how you get to school. So, in terms of transportation, we had several questions. Transportation was one of the last guidances that we received from DESE, and they sort of kept us in suspense as to how we were expected to accomplish this. So, one of the questions was, will there be assigned seats on a bus? So, I thought it would be best to describe a little bit what transportation is going to look like. So, first of all, I think it's important to note that parents are being asked to screen their students in the morning before they send them out to the bus stop. So if they have, and we'll have more information coming to parents about specific symptoms, but if they have any COVID-19 possible symptoms, we should not put them on the bus in the morning. That said, for our kids who are feeling good and are ready to get on the bus, there will be assigned seats. We'll have one student per seat on the bus, no more than 25 students on a bus. They will be directed by the bus driver or a bus monitor as necessary to their assigned seat. And they will sit in a zigzag pattern. So one student will sit next to the window, one will sit next to the aisle, and so on. And it'll be the opposite on the opposite side of the bus. Students will be required to wear a mask. There is hand sanitizer on each and every bus. They will be able, when they board the bus, be able to use hand sanitizer, and when they disembark the bus, be able to use hand sanitizer. We got a question about, will we be able to change our transportation arrangements during the school year? So, as you can imagine, with such limited seating capacity on the bus, it's going to be a challenge to make changes. We'll try our best to accommodate any change request from a family. We have asked that families submit one AM pickup location and 1 PM drop-off location. Those two do not need to be the same, but each day the AM location and the PM location need to be consistent. And but again, we will do our best effort to to accommodate changes, because we understand that family situations will be changing throughout this process. We got a question about, is reimbursement available to parents who transport their child to and from school? So, interestingly enough, there is a case where reimbursement would be available. So if a student has in their IEP specialized transportation provided, parents could transport their own child to and from school and would receive reimbursement for that. So if your child has specialized transportation included in their IEP, I'd encourage you to contact the special ed office here in the administration building, and they can help you with that. Those were the primary transportation questions. We got some questions about lunch. Everybody's going to be hungry, of course. So I guess to summarize all the questions, lunch will be served primarily eaten in the classrooms, although at the high school, there will be lunch served in some large spaces where physical distancing can be achieved. So in the classrooms, our classrooms set up again 6 feet apart. Students will be able to eat lunch at their desk. Lunch will be pre-ordered. Depending on the age group that we're talking about, lunch will either be delivered to the classroom for the students, or it'll be a grab and go system upon entering the building in the morning. I got a question, and it was a good one, about trash. We don't want, smelly lunch trash sitting around in the classroom all day. So what we have done is working with our great custodial staff. We are planning on adjusting their hours once we get in-person learning in place, and providing more support during the school day. And some of what they will be doing, in addition to cleaning and disinfecting high-touch areas, will be removing lunch trash. So it will not sit around all day in the classrooms. I got a health question regarding mandatory COVID testing. So just wanted to say that COVID testing will not be mandatory. Depending on the situation of each individual, if they have COVID-related symptoms, a COVID test would mean potentially that there could be an earlier return to school than if you decided not to get a COVID test. So there's some advantages, obviously, to have a COVID test that comes back negative and be able to get back to school sooner. So, but there will not be mandatory COVID testing. Those were the primary questions. I think I touched on most of the HVAC questions in my initial discussion. I think that.
All right, if you think of anything else, Mr. Kiley, just pop up.
I just thought of it, the isolation. You mentioned the isolation spaces. So in each building, there's an isolation space that is used if a nurse, if a student is sent down to, or potentially even a staff member has COVID-related symptoms, they will not go into the nurse's office with students who do not have COVID-related symptoms. So there is an isolation space that the nurses will be supervising and utilizing in each of the buildings. And that space is going to have minimal furnishings that can be cleaned. There is physical distancing in those spaces. And when a student is placed in the COVID isolation space, they will then be, their parents will be contacted and asked to come pick up the student and hopefully get a COVID test and hopefully it be negative and be able to return to school after a time frame without symptoms. So that is the plan for the isolation space. Each building has one. It's not a little cubicle closet. It's a larger space. And so, a student won't feel isolated, even though it's called an isolation space. And the nurses will be there to assist with those students.
Okay, that's a good transition to Ms. Jodwin, who's been supervising the nurses and working really heavily with them. And, let's hear a little bit. I know we had a nice meeting with the nurses and Dr. Clark, our district physician, the other day. And maybe you can give us some highlights about what's going on with the nurses and protocols and some of the practices, the PPE that we're putting in place.
So the nurses have been hard at work for a good part of the summer, just trying to wrap their heads around the best protocols to put in place. And by protocols, we're also talking about how students just come to the nurse's office. They want to be able to be ready for students who might be coming in with potential COVID symptoms. So, they are putting protocols in place in which students will not be just able to come themselves. The teacher will have to call first and make sure that, the nurse knows what the situation is. So that way the nurse is prepared, and included in that preparation is, being able to put on additional PPE if needed. And that has all been provided to them. Other protocols, just, really trying to work with staff to, teach students the importance of hand washing, teach students the importance of face wearing, mask wearing. I think that the nurses really feel that wearing masks is really an opportunity for education for students. About the importance of keeping themselves safe as well as everyone else. And so the nurses, are really working hard to ensure that their areas are safe, as well as there are protocols in place to maximize student safety as well.
Good, thank you. And I know our last meeting with them, we would be in touch because they did mention creating a video for families, I believe we're going to be doing just for that purpose, to really help families prepare, especially our little guys, about the masks as well as hand washing, but also our older students of how to even be personally responsible for their areas and keeping them clean in school, sanitizing, etc. So that'll be forthcoming. Since we're on some health reasons, I know there are a ton of questions about our COVID scenarios, as we say. How do we respond to various scenarios, things that might happen in our classrooms? Someone with temperature, someone getting sick, whatever it might be. So Ms. Roy is going to address some of those samples. And I will also mention that that information, the guidance document, is embedded in our Dartmouth Comprehensive Return to School Plan, which is on our website. So we'll give some samples today of how we address that in consultation with our local Board of Health director all the time. So Ms. Roy?
Thank you, Dr. Gifford. These scenarios fall into two main categories: the individual that's symptomatic and the individual exposed to a COVID-19 positive individual. So in the first case, if the individual is symptomatic, and if they are at home, they need to stay at home and get tested. If the individual is symptomatic, whether it be on the bus or at school, they will remain masked and adhere to the strict physical distancing. The students will be met by the nurse and they will stay in the medical isolation room that Mr. Kiley talked about until they can go home. They will not be sent home on a bus. If the individual is a staff member, they will also be sent home and asked to get tested. In the case where the individual is exposed to the COVID-19 positive individual, if the individual is at home when they learn about this close contact with the individual who's tested positive, they need to stay at home and be tested within 4 to 5 days of their last exposure. If they're at school when they learn they were in close contact with the individual tested, they should go home. They will not take the bus home. We will have families pick them up. And again, they should stay home and be tested within 4 to 5 days of their last exposure. In both of these scenarios, if the test is negative, as Mr. Kiley indicated, they can return to school once they're asymptomatic for 24 hours. If they are tested and they're positive, they need to remain home, monitor their symptoms, notify the school. Any of their close personal contacts should be notified. They can assist the schools in the contact tracing, answer calls from the Board of Health. And in many of these cases, it's relatively mild illness and they need to self-isolate for 10 days or at least 3 days has passed with no fever or symptoms. If for some reason the individual is not tested, they will need to remain home in self-isolation for 14 days from the onset of the symptoms. So again, there's a 20-page document that we have linked at the end of our plan that has further detail within these two scenarios that you're welcome to explore.
And I think obviously that's the concern. A lot of questions came, so I imagine many folks will be reading that. But I want to assure folks that like I said, in consultation with our Director of Board of Health, we will always adhere to the guidance. We will sanitize rooms that folks who had been in there are to be closed for 12 hours at least, according to the guidance. And folks will be alerted. I think that was one of the questions as well. Will parents be alerted? And the answer is yes. So it continues to be a fluid situation, but we will adhere to that guidance and make sure that the communication continues to our families. So I'd like to go back to special education. We had, again, a lot of questions. Obviously, there's a lot of concern. And I know you're going to talk a little bit about health related, but no, we actually covered a lot of that. If you have anything else to add when you start, that's fine. But also the implementation of special education. So if we can do some of that.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Gifford. So I want to begin just by letting everyone watching know that the focus of special education this fall is going to look different than it did in the spring. Primarily, in many cases, special education was seen under what was called the resources and support model in the spring. And this fall, the movement and the focus is really on instruction and services model. And what that means, in practicality, is that the minutes of students' IEPs will be met even if it is remotely. So the IEP service delivery grid is the driving force of how special education will come to students. And again, in a hybrid model, there will be minutes that will be able to be met in person as well as remotely during the remote period. For some students, for many students, they will start remotely, but those minutes will be held. So special education teachers, related service providers will provide specially designed instruction using some video conference platform, primarily Google Meet, that aligns with the students' goals and objectives. And, and as Ms. Oliver already said, because the design of the remote learning model is such that students are not going to be sitting in front of a screen for 6 hours a day, that's not our intent. There will be periods of time where students may complete some projects or independent work as part of their service delivery minutes. So in a brick and mortar situation, a special educator may ask them to independently tackle a particular project. So those minutes will also be embedded by which the student, just like the general ed peers, that student will have time at home, not in front of the computer per se, to work on some of those projects related to the specially designed instruction. And we just want to reiterate to continue that communication with your child's teacher or school if you're having any sort of difficulties in terms of logging on or accessing that instruction.
Beth, we also wanted to kind of acknowledge the fact that, we've heard from so many parents how challenging this time has been on so many levels. But particularly for students in their learning process. And that, we did get some questions from people that, their child is a general education student and they are struggling. And, we wanted, all of you to know that we do have supports available within the general education setting to meet academic and social needs of students. So, if, once things get up and running and, you still feel that your child is struggling, reach out to your schools, reach out to administration, to teachers, to have conversations about, what can be done in order to, enhance their supports.
Okay, thank you. I know, Mr. Galashaw, you're probably dying to speak again. You have more to say because there's a lot of technology questions.
Yeah, there were a lot of technology questions, but they went down the same line. The first one was Chromebooks. When do I get my Chromebook? Do my child get a Chromebook? As you know, we were 1-to-1 Chromebooks last year and the year before, grades 8 through 12. So we pretty much mastered that skill. If the student has a Chromebook problem, we have swap Chromebooks that they take on loaners as we're repairing those, and we cycle those through pretty well. We want to expand that, of course, for all students. So fortunately, in the spring, we got ahead of a rush that happened worldwide. There's a computer shortage worldwide, and so many districts are waiting possibly till October, November for Chromebooks to come in, which must be difficult for them. We fortunately were able to get 700 before the rush, actually literally before the rush. They said they were an order came in for 7,000 right after I placed mine. So we got those in, we enrolled them and got them all inventoried and such, and they're ready to go. So we're going to be rolling out Chromebook distribution to complement the existing Chromebooks we have. I think in the survey I had mentioned that if your child needs a Chromebook. Part of the reason for that is we have exactly the amount of Chromebooks as we have students, almost that close. So I think I looked for a little bit of buffer, but we really want students to have their Chromebooks. So there's no interruption at home about borrowing a computer or being on an incompatible platform or what have you. So I begin the process next Tuesday with the sixth graders. I sent out a message to the families of the sixth graders from 10 to 2, or the beginning alphabet at 10 to 12 and 12 to 2, and the message went out. And we're doing that same drive-through model, and we'll do that at each of the schools. We don't have to do it for the high school because the kids have theirs. The freshmen are getting theirs, but in a more advisory way, showing up on smaller situations, drive-through as well. But the middle school, we're going sixth graders drive-through coming in. Now, obviously, if you have a child that's seventh or eighth grader, let me know. We'll hand you theirs too, because you don't have to come back to do that. So it's I'll be there with staff in the middle school who know the families, and then we can identify which serial number we like to assign them to people, so we know where they are and we have a good handle on them. So we'll do the sixth grade distribution on Tuesday. We'll start there. The other distributions will come the following week. It seems to see a barrage of distributions happening all around the district around the 7th, 8th, the 8th, 9th, and 10th a little bit. So it's good that you get the students get those Chromebooks in, try them out, make sure they're working. I will set up hours and post on our website. If anyone's having a problem, there'll be links to go to your school to get a replacement. Or if the camera doesn't work or something like that, we like to swap them out. So there's not a whole lot of contact. We'll take those and we'll clean them up and straighten them out for the next loaner. So it does like that. Fortunately, we did place another order for Chromebooks that are due in October 1st that it'll make my buffer a little bit bigger, Dr. Gifford. I'll feel a lot better about swapping them out. So it's one of those situations that if you absolutely don't need a Chromebook, you could wait, but eventually we'll find you and get you a Chromebook, one of the newer ones that come, because we want everyone to have one. We want everyone to be using the same Chromebook. I mean, using a Chromebook. But we'll be okay as we do the 6, 7, and 8s coming up. The students will be very excited to see those. One thing I might mention about the sixth graders, in the spring, we're looking for them to return Chromebooks. Not everybody returned them, but they are using them all summer, Dr. Gifford, which I thought was a great testament to these young people. They're on them, they're using them. We would like those back so we can clean them up and make sure they go to elementary school students so you can get the middle school students. So that's one of the things I brought in one of the assistant principals from the middle school to enforce that, because he knows these kids and he knows just to make sure that they're returning those, just because we like to keep order to them, to know where the numbers are. We're a little bit like that when in technology, we want to keep that order. But everyone will get a Chromebook, and we'll do it as much as, as easily as possible with that drive-through model, handing it to them, they go through, and I think we'll be okay. If I had 2 other items that I think are rather important, I'll try not to ramble on because I know the time is getting up there. The second item had to do with transmission, internet, very important. You do need a reliable internet connection at home. A lot of people were saying that they have sometimes spotty internet, because one thing that happens with internet connections, if everyone on your street is watching movies on movie services or Zooming or such, sometimes it can bring the signal down, the speed down. Comcast will allow you to pay for more services. The bump up in service is possible for those people who can do that. Comcast also offers, and it's on our website, for those who want a more economical version that they can do if you work with Comcast. There's an application there for getting that connection. You can, and I think for about $120 a year, they'll provide an internet connection and a wireless hub. You have to qualify for their program, but it is on there. And additionally, if there's people with more need beyond that, please contact your school, because we have a grant that may provide access points. They're cellular access points for those people in great need, because this is a strange time we're in and you may have that need. Please be advised that these little hotspots, as they're called, they're not for the family's Wi-Fi. So you're going to be disappointed if you think everyone's going to get on there to go on Netflix. It's not going to work. It's designed for that one student going to all the educational sites that are dictated. So it's a very specific, these hotspots, the company that we're looking at knows exactly what they're doing. This is get to work hotspots. No extended family Wi-Fi. So there's other options for that. But the need is there, because I think it's so important that the kids have to have this connection to the internet. They have to have that access to do their work. And I think the Chromebooks will add to that, Dr. Gifford, to make sure they can do their work. And I think that was the other ones I had. So if I could turn it back to you so I just check my notes.
Okay, thank you. I do want to mention, I know there were a number of questions revolving around mask wearing. So we are going to require all staff and students to wear a mask. We are working with the school committee for a policy on that, but we are not going to allow at this point the gaiters or bandanas, as those have not been recommended according to the guidance to offer the proper protection that folks need. So if there's a question about that, we'll have more information coming out with our school committee meeting. But with the masks, we know there will be some children will have medical exemptions, those kinds of things, and those will be addressed, of course. I also wanted to mention that about mask breaks. So right now, we, again, with the guidance and consult with area physician, the mask breaks will occur in the classroom, 6 feet apart. The students will remain at their desks, and we are going to ask the teachers if they're obviously if they're not eating, they'll get to eat lunch, obviously. If there's a snack break, and the extra mask breaks when needed, teachers will be asking students to be silent. That's in the guidance about, again, if we all start talking and 12 students, we know how they are. We do the same thing, get all excited. And so it will be a silent. We've talked to the elementary principals today that perhaps teachers can do a mindfulness moment, just relax and think about things, or the teacher can do a read aloud at that time. Just times for those students to have a mask break. We're also using the outside, of course, with recess, and there'll be structured activities, not just run around all over the playground. Might lead students in whatever it might be, a stretching break or something, but they'll be obviously there. We're very cognizant of the need for that. We're all wearing them as well, obviously in our offices, and maintaining our distance and our mask wearing, and we need breaks as well. We also had some questions about kindergarten screening, so I'm going to ask Ms. Roy to talk about that.
So kindergarten screenings. So normally we would have completed them at this point, but because of the situation, we've decided to screen our kindergarten students when they return. So we're looking at beginning their return that October 1st and 2nd. So it will take a few days to complete that, but we will be doing that when they return on their in-person days. You should have received a kindergarten welcome video that was completed by the schools, and also a parent questionnaire at this point. So we're asking you to complete that and return it. We also did get a single question, I'm trying to look through these, regarding substitutes, whether they'll be trained on the new platform. And we are looking for clusters of substitutes in each of our buildings that are that we will be training to help with that, along with staff that are already in the building.
And I warned everybody, I said, don't be muted. So we have to say, you're muted, you're muted. Do you have anything, Ms. Oliveira, about, I know there are a lot of questions, and again, we have our hybrid and remote plans in place, the learning opportunities for students. But we do acknowledge right now that there are some questions from parents who are not going to have the opportunity to work with their child during the day. The child might be in a daycare situation. We recognize that. So just maybe give some thoughts about what we're trying to do to help those folks right now.
So we certainly do understand that it's difficult for parents that will be working that need to support their kids, and you know, we get it, we understand it. So if you're in that situation, please call your building principal. We can work with you and try to figure things out. Once we go hybrid, we're hoping that this will be a lot easier for parents because students will be coming home with the work that they could do. Our goal is to really make students self-sufficient on that day when they're at home doing work. We understand their kids and that's impossible. But one story that I can really tell when we learned, our lessons learned from the spring, was that we have a program in our elementary schools called ST Math. And any of our elementary parents know about Gigi, our penguin. The kids just love him or her, we haven't decided. And they have to work to get Gigi across the screen. This is a program that has no language. So it's all understanding and movement and spatial movement of Gigi. And if you look at it, it's very intimidating, even for adults. And kids went home, they use a QR code, which they scan on their Chromebooks, and they can do it. And we got responses from parents saying, I don't understand one thing, but my kid is doing this and they're very happy. And it looks like they're right because at the end, Gigi the penguin's very happy. So our goal is to have that, is to really train our kids that they can go home and do the work that's required of them. I always say to our teachers that, you know, expectations are high and we hold them high for our kids always surprise us and can do it. So that is our goal. During remote, if you're having some trouble, you know, we can work with you, show your kids how to log on, but we understand those difficult situations, and we're here to try to work with you and troubleshoot them the best we can. Our hope is to see all our kids. We want to see our kids back. We all want to go back to normal. We're all parents ourselves. And so together, when we work together during this, we can always do what's best for our kids. And that's our hope.
Okay. So I'm just going to wrap up. I don't think our folks have any more specific questions. I think we've covered pretty much everything as best as we could in the questionnaire here. But I just want to remind folks once again that the starting date for students for remote is September 15th. You will be receiving information from your schools, whether it's through a virtual orientation, newsletters home. You also are receiving information about signing up for the virtual platforms if you are choosing that your child not return to school. I'm not sure we mentioned that if you enter the virtual platform at the middle and high school, you will have to stay in it for at least a marking period. We don't want that disruption, not only for the student's sake, but also for the cohorting. It's, as Mr. Kiley mentioned, with the setup of the classrooms, we have to be very careful about the distancing and the number of students in the classrooms. About that, I also had a question about, folks asked about the high school transitioning in, why we didn't transition to 9th grade first. And we understand that that's a transition year, but it's very different than like a middle school 6th grade whole class coming in. They're multi-age classrooms. So they don't necessarily come in and all the 9th graders are together. They're in 10th grade classes perhaps, or 10th graders with it. It just, it wasn't a good fit, if you will. If you, once again, if you are interested in the the virtual platform, now that you've heard the information, you can reach out to your school, your building principal. And I also want to acknowledge not only this team of folks, like I said, all of us have lost about 1,000 hours of sleep. I do have deeper wrinkles and long hair, but we still like each other, even though we've worked really hard together, lots Zoom. We are in the office now. We all came back full time. But I also want to acknowledge our building level administrators as well. Their heads are spinning like all of ours. And I have to say that we are in a dilemma together. And together we can. We're trying to row in the same direction. And once again, patience is what we've been trying. I know we're all frustrated and anxious, but together we can. But I wanted to acknowledge the building admin team again, because and our directors, they're all working very, very hard to make this fit for all of us. And with the hope that we will soon return 100%, that we can all breathe easy, and that this becomes something in our past and a bad memory, a bad memory. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. And again, if you have further questions, please reach out to your building principals. They are moving now to get folks back in school, so they will have more specific answers for you, for your child. So once again, have a great rest of the evening, and we thank you so much for joining us tonight.